Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by talking directly to you.
Yeah, right to the listener.
Specifically, if you are the guy who feels like he he played by the rules his entire life, you were the nice guy, right?
The guy doing everything he was told to do.
Exactly. You held the doors, you paid for the dinners, you worked the overtime, you did everything society told you a good man is supposed to do. And what did it get you?
Often, not much.
Right. If you're looking around and feeling like the modern world is just rigged against you, like you're walking up a down escalator while everyone else is taking the elevator, you aren't crazy.
At least not according to the source material we are covering today.
No, definitely not. It's a sentiment we're seeing a lot, that specific frustration of being treated like a second-class citizen in a world that still demands you provide, but offers very little respect in return.
And to unpack all of this, we are diving into a book that really frames itself not just as a style guide, but as a total manifesto.
It's called Looks Maxing, Upgrading Your Appearance for Extra Sexual Market Value, written by Conrad Riker and released in 2025.
It is a massive, ultra-long, incisive piece of work. Truly fascinating.
It is. Now, before we even get into the weeds here, if you want to survive the landscape we're about to describe, you need to like and subscribe to the deep dive right now.
Yeah, hit that button.
We're bringing you the intel you won't hear in the mainstream, and we have to say, what we're discussing today is just a fraction of the data in the text.
Riker's book is incredibly dense. It's an absolute blueprint.
So we strongly urge you to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books immediately and buy the full text. If this resonates with you, you're going to need the actual manual.
And make sure to follow the author at Conrad Riker at Substack. He's putting out ongoing intel that tracks these exact trends in real time.
All right, let's get into the meat of this. Riker calls this book a wake-up call slammed on your front door.
He's not trying to be your friend here. He actually says he's here to deprogram you.
So our mission today is to impartially unpack his claims. We're going to look at his history of how institutions were captured by feminist and Marxist ideologies, and then examine the armor, both biological and financial, that he says men need to survive what he calls a gynocentric society.
Right, and it starts with a very specific diagnosis. Riker effectively argues that society is a matrix.
A matrix. We hear that term a lot, but what does he mean by it specifically in this context?
He means it's a rigged game, a system designed to extract resources from men while simultaneously neutralizing their authority.
He talks a lot about institutional capture, right?
Yes, he looks at HR departments, universities, the media. Riker argues these haven't just naturally drifted left over time.
He traces a history where they were actively captured by ideologies that view masculinity as inherently toxic.
Exactly. And that leads to this concept he brings up called the double bind.
The double bind. This part stood out to me because it feels like a very common experience. It's basically a lose-lose situation.
Precisely. He lays out how society sends two conflicting messages simultaneously. On one hand, men are told, open up, be vulnerable, cry, don't be a stone wall.
But Riker argues that if you actually do that, you're punished.
You're seen as weak, unattractive.
But then if you don't do it...
Then you're labeled toxic, a heartless robot. It's a trap where any move you make is the wrong move.
And he claims this isn't just a social feeling, but that it's backed by hard data regarding violence and safety.
Yeah, he attempts to completely flip the script on the toxic masculinity narrative. He cites the CDC's National Intimate Partner Survey.
Okay, what does the data say there?
The book highlights data suggesting that a significant portion of non-reciprocal violence, meaning where one partner hits the other without any retaliation, is actually female-initiated.
Wow.
His point is that you never hear the phrase toxic femininity. The media narrative is curated to ignore female aggression while spotlighting male aggression.
He also attacks the academic side of this, specifically the 1 in 4 campus rape myth.
Right, citing Professor Janice Fiamengo.
Can you explain the circular citation loops he mentions there? It sounded like a technical academic issue, but he really frames it as a weapon.
It's a fascinating concept. Disturbing, but fascinating. Riker explains that in certain grievance studies departments, one scholar will write a paper based on a completely dubious statistic.
Okay.
Then, a second scholar cites that first paper as proof. Then a third cites the second.
So eventually you have this fact that is accepted by the media and policymakers.
Exactly. But if you trace it all the way back, the original source was deeply flawed, or sometimes entirely non-existent.
It's a closed loop that just validates itself.
And he argues that's exactly how myths about male danger become institutional policy.
Which leads us right into the legal meat grinder. Reading the divorce court analysis in this book was heavy.
He doesn't mince words. He calls divorce state-sponsored robbery.
This is where the Matrix metaphor becomes very literal for him. He shares stories like Jim from Detroit,
Right, Jim's a guy who worked 30 years on an assembly line. Broke his back.
gets divorced, and ends up paying millions in alimony to an ex-wife who moved her new boyfriend in the very week after the papers were signed.
And then there's Mike from Michigan.
Paying child support for kids the court won't even let him see.
Riker uses these stories to illustrate his view that the legal system is purely designed to transfer wealth from men to women, completely regardless of fault.
And he backs this up with health data. This was shocking. He cites CDC data saying married men actually die 7 years younger than bachelors.
Which completely contradicts the common wisdom, doesn't it? We're always told marriage settles you down and makes you live longer.
Right. But Riker argues that's a lie to keep men on the plantation. He says the stress of the provider role, combined with the constant threat of divorce, is literally lethal.
He notes that the male suicide rate triples post-divorce.
Triples. That is a staggering number.
It is. And he couples that with the fear of false accusations. He references the Duke Lacrosse case and Title IX tribunals on college campuses.
His argument there is that the presumption of innocence, which is the bedrock of Western law, has been entirely replaced by a presumption of guilt regarding sexual misconduct.
He calls it a neutron bomb. It leaves the building standing, but wipes out the man's reputation and career instantly.
So, if we accept his premise that the game is rigged, that the legal and social systems are fundamentally hostile, Riker says you have two choices.
Complain or adapt.
And that brings us to the second segment of our deep dive, the biological reality. His main thesis here is pretty blunt. Biology doesn't care about your feelings.
You cannot negotiate with evolution. That's his core point. And he leans heavily on the concept of hypergamy.
Now, that's a term that gets thrown around a lot in these spaces, so let's define how Riker uses it impartially, because often it just sounds like an accusation that women are greedy.
Riker argues it's not malice at all, it's pure survival. Hypergamy is the evolutionary instinct for women to trade up.
To seek status, protection, survivors.
Right. In the ancestral environment, mating with a weak male meant you and your offspring died. So women are hardwired to look for specific markers of dominance and health. Riker says you can hate that fact, or you can leverage it.
So if that's the software running in the background, how do we upgrade our hardware?
That's the looks maxing blueprint.
And he gets incredibly specific. It's not just, hey, go to the gym. He talks about the V-taper.
The V-taper is the ratio between your shoulder circumference and your waist. Riker explains the biomechanics here. A wide shoulder structure and a narrow waist signals upper body strength.
The ability to throw a punch or a spear.
Exactly. It's a primal safety signal to the female brain. He advises aiming for 15% body fat with visible abs.
But he also gets into things you can't easily change at the gym, like a weak zygomatic bone or narrow clavicles.
The zygomatic bone is your cheekbone.
Right. High prominent cheekbones protect the eyes in combat. It's a warrior feature.
And Riker suggests that if you lack these genetic gifts, you have to manage them aggressively.
Through beard styling, lowering body fat further, or even surgery if you're fully committed to the blueprint.
One thing I found really interesting was his section on the voice. He cites research from the University of Sussex claiming deep voices baritones get 89% more hookups.
89%? That's huge. And it comes down to testosterone, right?
Yes, pitch correlates with testosterone levels during puberty. A deep voice is an unfakeable signal of hormonal health.
Riker puts it bluntly. If you sound like Mickey Mouse, you are turning off her biological switch before you even finish your sentence.
He actually suggests vocal training to intentionally lower your resting pitch.
He also talks about posture. He references a Harvard study on expansive postures, basically taking up space.
Manspreading, as it's critically called.
Yeah.
Riker argues it's actually a dominant signal.
Standing or sitting like you own the room tells the female brain that you are safe to be around because you aren't afraid of the environment.
Now, let's talk about scent. This was one of the most surprising scientific tips in the book.
Yeah, Riker says ditch the Axe body spray.
It's the science of MHC major histocompatibility complex.
Let's break that down for the listener. What exactly is MHC?
MHC molecules are a core part of your immune system. Riker points to a really famous study from the Max Planck Institute.
Showing that women are biologically driven to select mates with different immune systems than their own.
Exactly. It ensures their offspring have a much broader immunity to diseases.
So they can literally smell your immune system.
They smell the genetic compatibility in your sweat. Riker's argument is that if you mask that with cheap chemical sprays, you are blocking the biological internet.
You're preventing her from sensing that you are a genetic match.
So he suggests using pheromone-free deodorant or even going natural if your hygiene is absolutely dialed in. Let the immune system flirt for you.
Let the immune system flirt for you. I like that concept. So, okay, you've upgraded the chassis. You look like a predator, not prey. But in Riker's worldview, looks just to get you in the door.
Resources are what keep you alive.
Which brings us to the third segment, financial warfare. Wealth as armor.
This is where the book shifts entirely from biology to hard-nosed economics. Riker describes the modern economy as the estrogen economy.
He argues that the welfare state, dating apps, divorce courts, they are all mechanisms built to monetize male desperation and transfer wealth.
And he introduces a calculation called the gynocratic tax.
What is that?
It's the cost of doing business in a romantic relationship under the current system. It's the dinners, the gifts, but also the massive potential risk of losing half your assets in a divorce.
Riker calculates this tax is so high that traditional dating is essentially a terrible investment.
So his solution is defensive economics. And he goes full James Bond here.
He really does. He talks about Wyoming LLCs and Cook Islands trusts. Now, obviously, we aren't financial advisors, but can you explain the Section 12 loophole he mentions regarding the Cook Islands? He treats it almost like a magic shield.
It's not magic, but it is incredibly powerful. The Cook Islands have very specific asset protection laws. Section 12 refers to a part of their Trust Act where the statute of limitations on fraudulent transfer is extremely short, sometimes as little as 1 or 2 years.
Wow.
Furthermore, if someone wants to sue your trust to get your money, they have to physically fly to the Cook Islands, hire a local lawyer, and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you moved the money specifically to defraud them.
Which makes it almost impossible for a U.S. divorce court to seize those assets.
Exactly. You could also hold gold in Singapore or keep your wealth in crypto. He calls these divorce-proof bunkers.
So the strategy is to make yourself look poor on paper while being rich in reality.
He calls it tactical selfishness. He says you should treat a relationship like a limited liability corporation. Never co-sign a loan.
Rent property in other names or through those anonymous Wyoming LLCs. If you break up, she should realize you own absolutely nothing personally.
There's a character in this section who really embodies this, Derek from Detroit. He's presented as the hero of the financial warfare section.
Derek is the ultimate anti-simp. He completely refused to play the provider role.
The story goes that he built a massive consulting empire, but he lived with extreme frugality. He wore thrift store blazers, tailored to fit that V-taper, of course.
Naturally.
And he drove a beat-up car. He dated women, but he never let them know he actually had money. The rule of his anti-simp protocol was that a woman's financial contribution must match her interest.
And the kicker is the alimony reversal.
Right. Because he never married them and kept his assets hidden in these offshore structures. When the relationships ended, he hadn't commingled anything.
In one case, a former gold digger partner actually ended up owing him alimony due to a business arrangement they had signed.
Riker uses Derek to prove that you can win if you refuse to play by the traditional rules of happy wife, happy life.
Speaking of rules, Riker is very strict about dating protocols. The dinner date is absolutely forbidden in his book.
He views the dinner date as a resource extraction test. You pay, she eats, you get nothing.
So Riker advises coffee dates only for the first meeting. Low cost, low commitment. Or, if you really want to test her interest, he suggests the cemetery tour.
Which sounds insane at first.
Right. A cemetery tour sounds like the start of a horror movie, not romance. Why on earth does he suggest that?
It's a pure filter. He says if you invite a woman to a museum opening that's free, or a walk through a historic cemetery, you are removing money from the equation entirely.
Ah, I see.
If she shows up and actually engages with you in that setting, she is interested in you, not the free meal, not the status.
It filters out the gold diggers immediately. Stop buying her affection.
That's a stark way to look at it, but it fits perfectly within his framework.
And this leads us perfectly into the final segment. You can have the looks, you can have the hidden crypto in Singapore, but if your head isn't right, you're still going to lose. Segment 4 is about reclaiming masculinity, brotherhood, and mindset.
Riker talks a lot about brotherhood fortresses. This is crucial to his strategy.
He argues that men have lost their male spaces. The Boy Scouts, the church, the local lodge institutions that used to be about male bonding have been neutered.
Or opened up to everyone, thereby losing their specific purpose for instructing and bonding men.
So we have to rebuild the tribe. He suggests Mongolian brotherhood contracts. What does that look like in practice?
It's a mutual aid pact. It's not just a group chat where you complain. It's a group of men who agree, in writing, to support each other financially and physically if things go south.
He suggests finding physical spaces like BJJ gyms, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or Masonic-style lodges, places where men bond through shared struggle and friction.
Because he's very critical of the modern therapy approach for men.
Oh, extremely critical.
He says men bond shoulder to shoulder, facing a task or an enemy, not face-to-face crying in a therapy circle.
He actually believes the therapeutic model is designed for women and actively feminizes men.
And for those who feel the system is simply too dangerous to engage with at all, he discusses MGTOW men going their own way.
For listeners who might not be familiar, MGTOW is a movement where men decide to shun marriage and sometimes serious relationships entirely.
But Riker frames this not as giving up or being a loser. He frames it as a strategic withdrawal.
Like an army retreating from a battle they cannot win in order to preserve their forces. You're removing your resources from a rigged game.
There's also a surprising spiritual element to the book. He talks about religious masculinity, referencing biblical patriarchs.
Right. He looks at figures like Abraham and Moses. He points out they didn't ask for permission, they took responsibility.
They were warlords and leaders, not nice guys.
He actually reframes tithing giving 10% of your income, not as a religious duty to a church, but as a psychological hack to rewire the brain for abundance.
If you can give away money, you are proving to your subconscious that you aren't a slave to debt or the system. It's a power move against scarcity.
We also have to touch on the topic of sexual energy. He brings up semen retention. This is something gaining huge traction in these circles.
It is. Riker calls it biohacking. The theory is that sexual energy is the most potent form of creative energy a man has.
If you are wasting it on porn or dead-end encounters, you're depleting your drive.
He suggests channeling that biological frustration into your career, your physique, your empire. It's all about transmutation.
And it all comes back to building a mental fortress. He advocates heavily for stoicism, rejecting the modern demand for vulnerability.
And weaponizing language. This is a key tactic he gives the readers.
Yeah.
When someone uses a term like mansplaining or fragile masculinity against you, Riker says, do not apologize.
Do not explain yourself. Reframe it. He calls this reality inoculation.
Reality inoculation.
Yeah.
You inoculate yourself against their frame. If they call you intimidating, you interpret it internally as competent. Don't let society control the frame of the conversation.
Ultimately, the goal of all of this, the looks, the money, the mindset, is to become what Riker calls the sovereign man.
The sovereign man is the end state. He owns his value. He has amplified his looks to the absolute genetic limit.
He has protected his assets so the state can't touch them, and he rules his world psychologically.
He is no longer begging for scraps.
It's a really powerful image he leaves us with. The lion in the concrete jungle. You know, you're in the city, you're in the modern world, but you are operating with the instincts and the power of a predator.
You've stopped waiting for the system to save you because you know it won't. Only you can save yourself.
That is the core message of the book: physical, financial, and spiritual sovereignty. And that brings me to a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If the systems we've relied on for decades are truly crumbling, as Riker suggests, what does the next evolution of male community look like outside of the digital space? If the grid goes down, who is actually in your Mongolian brotherhood?
It's a serious question to ask yourself.
And that is where we have to leave it today. This deep dive has been a heavy one, but necessary. We've covered the what and the why, but the how, the specific workout routines, the exact legal structures for the Cook Islands trusts, the literal scripts for dating interactions, that is all in the book.
You really do need the full manual. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy Looks Maxing by Conrad Riker. It is an investment in your own survival.
And don't forget to follow him at Conrad Riker at Substack. That's at Conrad Riker. The world is changing fast, and you need that ongoing intel to stay ahead of the curve. Absolutely. If you got value from this deep dive, if you feel a little less crazy than you did 20 minutes ago, smash that like button and subscribe to our show. We are here to help you navigate the chaos. Until next time.
Stay sovereign.